top 5 defensive measures are in 2024. I almost messed that up, but without further ado, please take it away.
Thank you very much. And 2 points that I want to say up front. First, if you were here for Brad's talk in the morning, so it's not usual for Sergeant Major to get the purple hair, but since most of them grow beards and I don't have the testosterone for that, purple hair it is. Also, if you had the fortune of seeing Mudge's talk, I felt preemptively called out. But we're going to get into some of that as we go on. So a little bit of background. We all know in this industry, the regulations aren't really all that great. Yes, there are things like GDPR and HIPAA that protect bits and pieces of the cyber landscape, but there's not really cohesive overarching regulation. And so one of the roles that the insurance industry has taken is to provide some amount of financial incentives for companies to do better at their internal cybersecurity. I mean, that's really one of the main reasons why you're starting to see MFA everywhere. It is really difficult to get insurance coverage if you cannot honestly say that you have MFA on most of your systems. And so some of the data that I've been looking at now that I work in the insurance industry is some of the risk modeling, some of the things that we have based on data collected from cyber insurance claims. So number 5, top mitigation, patching. Okay, yes, Mudge talked about patching is somewhat controversial, and that's kind of why this is number 5 on the list. Especially last year, one vulnerability in particular kind of skewed all of the data because it caused a lot of insurance claims. But patching is still a thing that most insurance companies think that most of y'all should do. And so you'll see also a little bit of difference in how companies manage their internal versus their external vulnerability management. A lot of times there's different patching cadences, different scanning cadences for your internal and external networks. And even before 2024 and all of the issues we've seen with boundary devices, there have been some alarms raised about the security of those boundary devices, about keeping those patched. Because those are the first things that an attacker is going to see if they're trying to get into your network. Number 4 on the list, website certificates. Guessing you didn't see that one coming. And this is a really interesting one because this isn't really how attackers get into people's networks. However, it is a thing that is very easy to do wrong. It's a thing that most companies do extremely poorly. There's going to be HTTPS sites redirecting to HTTP and all sorts of craziness like that. And so this is what I consider an indicator. It's not a vulnerability in of itself, but if you're doing this wrong, what are you doing wrong inside of your network? And so that's why this is something that the insurance industry will zero in on. Next thing, exposed ports, attack surface. I love attack surface minimization. I want as few things to be exposed to the internet as possible. Furthermore, the less you have exposed to the internet, the less that you have to patch. This is a win-win here. But I see all sorts of weird things exposed to the internet. Legacy protocols like Telnet, remote management services, SSH, RDP, VNC, you name it, I've probably seen it. Unpatched services, IIS-6, people are still using that in production on publicly exposed web servers. Things that I have no idea why they're even running on corporate networks like Minecraft. I don't know. Number 2, compromised systems. If you already have a compromised system, you are probably going to have a cyber insurance claim at some point. This should be obvious, and yet here we are. And so how do we detect that? Well, there's beacons to known sinkholes, and so we can detect that. Who is scanning the entire internet? That's probably a pwned system if you're not explicitly a research institution. And this shows the importance of organizations examining your outbound, not just your inbound traffic. Because when people are trying to scan the entire internet from inside your network, you might want to ask questions. And this also goes to, if you've had an incident in the past, did you really kick them out of the network? Really kick them out of the network? All right, so the number 1 thing that insurance companies look at when they're considering, how are we assessing you for a cyber insurance policy? Firmographics. All of those things that I talked about are what we call technographics, but they pale in comparison in the data that we have available to us to firmographics. Things like, what is your industry? Right now, if you are in the healthcare industry, you're not having a good day. There's lots of things going wrong there. But the number one thing that blows all of the other data out of the water is your revenue. The more money you make, the more likely you are to suffer a cyber insurance claim. Everything else is a far distant second to your revenue. So what's missing from all this? You'll notice that a lot of what I've talked about is visible from outside in. These aren't things that you are learning from inside the organization because it's a completely different set of data available to us. It's also worth noting that approximately 50% of cyber insurance claims, their root cause was business email compromise or fraudulent funds transfer. It's not people breaking into systems, it's people emailing your finance department and asking for money. That is the root cause of most cyber claims. And so again, all of those technographic indicators are extremely secondary to how do you treat your people? And so, yes, we do have a little bit of insight into what goes on inside of networks because we collect a bunch of questionnaires. And they focus on things like hardened system baseline, privileged account management, credential storage, incident response, business continuity, disaster recovery planning. But there's still more things that we aren't really collecting the data on. There's questions that we're not asking. What is your organizational culture like? One of the things that my team firmly believes is that cyber is a social science. How people interact with each other, the place that your cyber leadership takes in your overall business leadership, all of that matters a ton to considering your overall organizational security. What does your staff training and development look like? Do you actually work on developing your people? Are you hiring good entry-level talent and growing them, or just assuming you can hire a bunch of rock stars and it will magically work out fine? How are you measuring your security awareness program? Are you looking at click rates or reporting rates? Does your security team even respond to reported phishing emails? What does your roadmap look like? How did you prioritize it that way? Does your organization realize that you can never actually arrive at security? And what are the other technologies that aren't showing up on these surveys? Are you talking about password managers, honeypots, ad blocking? All those things that we all know as an industry have value, I don't have data on because we're not asking those questions. One more note on models. The models that I've talked about so far have been frequency models. They are what is the likelihood of experiencing an incident. They are not how bad is that incident going to be. In insurance, it's easy for us to measure severity because it's money. It's how much does that incident cost an organization. And that severity modeling is less mature than the frequency modeling. But the preliminary data that we're seeing is that your major consideration for that severity modeling is data, it's records. It's how much data you have. There's an old saying, don't collect what you can't protect, and that is extremely true. One of the sayings that I saw recently that stuck with me is that data is nuclear waste. The more data you have, the more expensive it's going to be if anything happens to it. So if you can minimize your data, you can minimize your losses. So what do we do with that knowledge? Well, for me in the insurance industry, a lot of what I'm working on is figuring out how to ask better questions. What are the right handful of things that I can ask in order to very quickly assess an organization's overall cybersecurity risk without having to resort to a 100-page questionnaire? Some of them are more than 100 pages. And then for y'all that might have to fill out some questionnaires at some point in life, for the love of all that you hold sacred, answer them honestly, and when there is the opportunity to expand on answers, use that opportunity. Tell me about the technologies that you're using that the questionnaire didn't ask about. Give me all the details on how you implemented a thing, because how it's implemented, none of this stuff is binary. Yes, you can have multi-factor authentication. tell me about that one system that doesn't have it enabled and how you're protecting it, because we've all seen that's how organizations are getting pwned a bunch of times. It's that one system. So where did I get all this data from? These particular studies. If you would like the actual links, you can email me right there and I will happily send them to you. Do we have time for any questions? All right, any questions? Yes.
So one of the things that we looked at when I was supporting the Department of State many years ago was the actuarial data. So should CISA be the holder of this? How do we create this database, this data storage, that we can have this historical information on severity so we can make risk-based decisions? Next speaker.
Yeah, where the data should live is absolutely an interesting question, especially since my company looks global. We are not just United States based. And so being able to understand that what this looks like in one region is not necessarily what it looks like in a different region. These are broad overarching generalizations. That being said, there are a couple of different organizations that do a lot of that modeling. And so right now it's a matter of talking to them and trying to get their trained models, which I realize is an extremely unsatisfying answer.
I mean, there's a lot of competition. Your organizations will be mutually benefit from having the best models.
Yep. We are, we're also working on building our own, and it is bearing out what I have seen by looking at what is publicly released about other models. Anything else? Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.